Hello, I'm Esther Githu. It's Friday, September 16th. This is Africa 54.
Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud and U.S. defense officials discussed the partnership between the two nations in the fight against extremists in Somalia and the Horn of Africa. Queen Elizabeth's death evokes both fond and bitter memories in Zimbabwe. And in our entertainment segment, Heather Maxwell presents Biliali Soudan, a traditional band from Timbuktu, Mali that kicked off its U.S. tour this week in New York City. All this and much more on today's Africa 54.
We begin in the U.S. Capitol, where the U.S. Secretary of Defense hosted talks Thursday at the Pentagon with the Somali president. Paul Ndiho has the details on their meeting.
U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin welcomed the president of Somalia, Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, to the Pentagon for an enhanced honor cordon. The two men also talked about the threat posed by Somali-based terrorist group Al-Shabaab. In remarks, Austin hailed the partnership between the two nations in the fight against extremists in Somalia and the Horn of Africa.
I was encouraged to hear of the Somali-led operations in August against Al-Shabaab after its July incursion into Ethiopian territory. Our cooperation here is crucial, Mr. President, and we stand ready as your partners to defend help you defend yourselves against these violent forces.
President Hassan Mohamud thanked the United States government with the Somali people and the fight against Al-Shabaab.
Secretary, thank you very much. Again, it's a great pleasure and honor for me to be here again. I want to extend my gratitude to the United States government for its strategic partnership with the Somali people in our fight against Al-Shabaab, as well as the provision of critical humanitarian development support as well.
The Al-Qaeda-linked insurgents have been waging war against the government for nearly 15 years and control a large part of territory in the country.
Mr. President, I also appreciate the transparency of your security initiatives and the inclusion of key international partners in the planning and discussions. And I remain grateful for the willingness of your government and your people to host our forces in Somalia.
President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud had pleaded an all-out war against the group after he staged a deadly 30-hour hotel siege in Mogadishu last month. He called on the Somali people to stay away from locations where Al-Shabaab is present and called on Al-Shabaab militants to surrender to the security forces to avoid being killed.
Since June 2022, SNA has led Somali National Army has been able to partner with the local forces in the removal of Al-Shabaab from 20% of the area they controlled before.
The jihadist group has carried out several attacks in the mainly Muslim country since Mohamud took office in May. Mohamud said in July that ending the insurgency required more than the military approach, but that his government would negotiate with Al-Shabaab only when the time was right. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
U.S. President Joe Biden welcomes South African President Cyril Ramaphosa to the White House for talks on Friday. Ramaphosa and his delegation are also expected to meet with congressional leaders and the veterans of the civil rights movement who were instrumental in lobbying the American public against apartheid and who remain loyal to the cause of anti-racism in both the United States and South Africa. For more details on President Ramaphosa's meeting with the U.S. Commander-in-Chief, let's go live now to the White House, where VOA's Heidi Adams is standing by. Hello, Heidi.
Hello there, Esther.
You know, there has been a lot of speculation as to why President Biden invited President Ramaphosa. Do we know exactly why the two leaders are meeting today?
Well, Esther, the White House says that what prompted this meeting is not just one particular issue, but several pressing global challenges that these two countries share as priorities. And you'll remember that this meeting comes hot on the heels of a visit by U.S. Secretary Blinken to the African continent. He visited South Africa, of course, where he launched the U.S. strategy towards sub-Saharan Africa. And the White House has placed particular emphasis on South Africa's strategic importance, saying none of these issues can move forward without including the South Africans. They say they want to hear the South Africans' perspective on this. Of course, South Africa is seen as a leader on the African continent. It is a prominent voice in the global South, being the only African country as part of the G20 and, of course, as part of the BRICS grouping. And so senior White House officials say they're keen to hear from President Cyril Ramaphosa and that the world cannot move forward on these issues without South African leadership and without South African contributions. And earlier today, President Ramaphosa met with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris at the Vice President's residence, where they said they were discussing issues such as women's empowerment, healthcare, more of these sort of shared priorities. And in a short while, of course, the two heads of state will meet right here at the White House in the Oval Office, and we are keen to hear what comes out of that meeting.
Well, from your sources, Heidi, do you know what the discussions might be about?
Well, Esther, here's what we know. The leaders are expected to discuss trade, investment, infrastructure, climate and energy, and health. But the White House has confirmed that the issue around Russia's war in Ukraine will most certainly be on the agenda. And as you talked about the speculation earlier, this is a sticking point for the two leaders. Of course, based on what the South Africans are telling us, is that President Cyril Ramaphosa is going to talk about getting through this and moving towards resolving the conflict through dialogue, through consensus, and kind of looking at a more multilateral approach to the conflict. But here's a potential sticking point, Esther. There is a bill right now moving through the U.S. Congress called the Countering Malign Russian Activities in Africa Act. And this bill has bipartisan support in the U.S. House of Representatives. If it is passed in the Senate, and if President Biden signs this bill into law, it will essentially sanction countries that trade with Russia. And this is going to probably be an issue because it also speaks to the timing of this meeting, because South Africa is a huge trading partner and the most important trading partner for the United States on the African continent. There are 600 U.S. companies operating in South Africa, and the United States is South Africa's third largest trading partner after China and the EU. So there's a lot of trade matters at stake here, but the economics is tied to the politics, and it is the politics where these two might not have as much common ground at the moment around the issue of the war in Ukraine.
Heidi, stick around the White House and let us know exactly what goes on after the two leaders begin their discussions. Heidi, thank you. Heidi Adams reporting live for us from the White House. Now moving on to Ethiopia. Ethiopian government troops have renewed fighting against the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front. An airstrike on Wednesday killed 10 people in northern Tigray, only one day after 2 people were wounded in strikes on a local TV station and Mekelle University. The TPLF is also accusing neighboring Eritrean forces of joining the government against them. There are also reports of tensions between 2 of Ethiopia's largest ethnic communities, the Amhara and Oromia. For more on this conflict, I'm joined live via Skype from London by William Davison, a senior analyst for Ethiopia with International Crisis Group. Mr. Davison, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much for having me.
You know, this war is a complex issue and not only involves the government troops of Ethiopia against the TPLF, but also a foreign country. What is Eritrea's role in this war?
Eritrea was part of the initial attempt to remove the TPLF regional government in November 2020. That was a campaign which also involved multiple atrocities. Eritrea's government, particularly its president, Isaias Afwerki, they are long-time enemy and opponent of the TPLF. They fought as rebels in the 1980s. They fell out in the 1990s after Eritrea's independence in 1993, and then they fought a brutal war, Ethiopia versus Eritrea, when the TPLF was in charge in Ethiopia in 1998. So it is really the bitterness and the enmity created by that history that led to Eritrea's involvement there.
You know, William, what we've seen since 2020, the tensions in Ethiopia, brings me to a question of what exactly do we know about the two phases of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, the Nobel Peace Prize laureate, and the Abiy Ahmed of today?
I think Abiy took power at a time of great political turbulence after a period of sustained anti-government protests. And many people domestically and internationally saw him essentially as Ethiopia's savior. That was certainly how he presented himself. He presented himself as all things to all people. He made very uplifting speeches, very welcome aspirations regarding democracy and peace. But the problem is that Ethiopia's political challenges at that time were incredibly deep. It is very hard to find consensus in such a divided country. And ultimately, Abiy has mismanaged the transition. It has obviously led to civil war and other very serious violence. So I think, although the aspirations were there, probably the awarding of the Nobel Peace Prize was premature. And then Ethiopia's political realities have hit home, and we have seen Abiy act more as a traditional authoritarian Ethiopian leader rather than any departure from that.
Should we be hopeful that the mediation efforts by the African Union right now and other parties will bring these warring parties together to reconcile and bring peace to the Horn of Africa giant?
There's hope in the sense that we see a lot of concerted diplomatic activity. We have the African Union envoy Obasanjo. We have the US envoy Mike Hammer bringing representatives from Tigray's government and the federal government together in Djibouti, and there is generally an understanding we need an expanded and more robust international mediation here, and we see some sort of nominal commitments to peace from the parties. But what we don't have is agreement on some critical issues. Tigray wants a blockade on Tigray, commercial traffic, public services, to be lifted by the federal government before they're willing to enter into a truce. And this is the sort of thing that has taken us back to war 3 weeks ago. And unless those issues are resolved by those international actors, then we could well see another bout of sustained conflict here.
William, thank you so much for your insight. That was William Davison, a senior analyst for Ethiopia with International Crisis Group. The state funeral for Queen Elizabeth will take place on Monday. 2 minutes of silence will be observed across Britain. And at the end of the funeral at Westminster Abbey, giving the British public a chance to pay their respects to the late monarch. The death of the Queen has resurfaced memories both fond and bitter in Zimbabwe. Some attended a church service Thursday to remember the monarch, while others said they didn't see the point. David Doyle has more.
Just a handful of mourners attended a memorial service for Queen Elizabeth in Zimbabwe's capital on Thursday. The death of the British monarch has stirred mixed feelings across Africa about the legacy of colonialism on the continent. At the Anglican Church in Harare, some congregants expressed fond memories for Zimbabwe's former colonial ruler. Elizabeth visited Zimbabwe in 1947 with her parents and again as Queen in 1991, when she was hosted by former President Robert Mugabe. At the time of her first visit, Zimbabwe was a British-ruled colony with some autonomy, known as Southern Rhodesia, and with a white minority government. Outside the church, some Zimbabweans, like Ronmard Manzungu, said colonialism is inextricably linked with Elizabeth's 70-year reign.
I do not think it's necessary to celebrate her life. In the past, she led the colonial era. It is painful that they took our land while we were left to suffer. We will never forget. When she died, I was indifferent. She was old, so I guess it was now time.
Langton Musa said he didn't see the need for a memorial and that it has no benefit for common Zimbabweans. The Southern African country left the Commonwealth network of mostly former territories of the British Empire in 2003. That was after Mugabe came under criticism over disputed elections and the seizures of land from white farmers. In 2008, Elizabeth stripped Mugabe of the honorary knighthood she had awarded him in 1994, citing the abuse of human rights and disregard for the democratic process.
David Doe of Reuters filed that report. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. A Sierra Leonean American tennis sensation inspires young tennis players, and in our entertainment report, Heather Maxwell brings us the sounds of Biliali Soudan. Stay with us.
Britain's longest reigning monarch, Queen Elizabeth, passed away on Thursday, September 8th. Her death has brought to surface many ugly aspects of British colonialism and ignited contentious feelings about her life and legacy. On this week's episode of Our Voices, we hear diverse voices on Queen Elizabeth's long-lasting and controversial relationship with Africa. But what about African queens, women presidents, and icons? We will also consider some of them who have changed the course of the continent's history. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices. Every year, world leaders gather in New York for the annual United Nations General Assembly. Count on VOA to be there, delivering news you can trust on radio, TV, and the web.
Des discours présidentiels aux entretiens en tête-à-tête avec des responsables gouvernementaux de haut niveau, nous vous tiendrons informés des développements importants touchant le continent.
Líderes africanos vão abordar tópicos como alterações climáticas, o estado da economia, saúde, iniciativas juvenis e muito mais.
Usikose kufuatilia habari na vipindi maalum katika lugha 16 tofauti kuhusu kongamano la viongozi moja kwa moja kutoka makao makuu ya Umoja wa Mataifa mjini New York na Washington DC. Tutakuarifu kila tukio.
A free press is essential. VOA Africa.
In other African news, Egypt has freed 46 prisoners, including a prominent left-wing activist and lawyer, Haitham Mohamedin, who had been behind bars for 4 years. U.S. climate envoy John Kerry cautions against investing in long-term gas projects in Africa as countries in the region wrestle with how to power their development with clean energy. And thousands of young women and teenage girls will dance before the new king of South Africa's Zulu nation on Saturday, defying critics of the tradition and a dispute over the legitimacy of the royal succession. Sierra Leonean American tennis sensation Francis Tiafoe made history as the first American man to reach the U.S. Open semi-finals since 2006. He achieved that feat after eliminating 22-time Grand Slam champion Rafael Nadal. Tiafoe, a player who never won a match past the 4th round at a Grand Slam tournament until this year, was discovered as a child at the USTA Junior Tennis Champions Center in College Park, Maryland, where his father worked as a janitor. As VOA's Jackson Vunganyi reports, Tiafoe continues to inspire young tennis players around the world, especially in his parents' country of Sierra Leone.
Francis Tiafoe's thrilling run at this year's U.S. Open ended after his loss in the semi-finals to Carlos Alcaraz at the Arthur Ashe Stadium. The 24-year-old Sierra Leonean American Tiafoe calls his run at the U.S. Open a Cinderella story.
I mean, anybody can do it, honestly. Obviously, that's a cliche, but I think if you're really passionate about something, everybody's got a gift. Just kind of tapping into that and really taking it seriously. And if you're truly passionate about something, I think anything can happen. And being just obsessed with it. Right now, I'm just really obsessed with tennis, and I want to see how far I can go with this thing. You know, everyone loves a Cinderella story, so I mean, let's try and make one.
Even though Tiafoe didn't win the U.S. Open Championship, he continues to be an inspiration to thousands of young tennis players around the world, including these young tennis players in Freetown, Sierra Leone.
Platform has motivated me more because for a tennis player to reach that kind of level, it will take him much training, like training harder every day, every hour and minute, and like training is not that much easier.
That is Mese Conte. She practices each day at this Sierra Leonean Tennis Association facility in the capital, Freetown. Tatu Conte is a junior champion. She says that it takes a lot of patience and discipline to achieve that level of success in tennis.
I've been following him when he was struggling with his dad and mom, sleeping on the tennis court, finding it difficult to have facilities, even to have sponsors, to have coach. It was not easy for him. But now, since he loved the sport and there are opportunities, so now he's playing well. One thing I've learned is that you have to love the game, passion for the game, because for Francis to reach to that level, it takes patience. It was not easy. So
Amadou Bangura is the Sierra Leone tennis head coach. He says that his students continue to be inspired by Tiafo and his work ethic on the court.
Francis Tiafo have already inspired players that they always explain to me that, coach, I want to be like Francis Tiafo. So I said, okay, if you want to be like Francis Tiafo, then you need to go to the court, work like Francis Tiafo, train like Francis Tiafo, then you will be able to achieve as what Francis Tiafo have already achieved. There are some players who are naturally talented. Yeah, they have good forehand, they have good backhand. In fact, some of them have good service. But as I said, the stepping stone to reach to that level is very far. But you need something to take you to that level, to go as far as where Francis Tiafo is at this time, or more than, to be a world number one.
In our entertainment report, it's time for some music, and Heather Maxwell reports from our studios in New York.
Hello, the band from Timbuktu, Mali, Biliali Soudan has just arrived in New York City. They joined me here at VOA Studios, and they are going to perform 2 songs. This first one is called Tanyani, and it's about future generations.
Bismillah. لو بكى جغالي محمد ورغي إبراهيم أنا جو بكري بابا ورغي جروب أنا بلو بلالي سودان عشان نمو مثل أصلا كان بدان ها نيويورك جروبنا البلالي سودان ها نيويورك تقيما أنا أبلاش أنا أمريكا والله أنا وراء رغيلي هذا من كيري أنا مالي أتلي هذا تلا يلا دعنا تالي أطير وإن تموسني كوري وتحمل من داخلي وتحمل من دات تمل والله والله كالتيمبكتو فرطنا كالتيمبكتو ما قدر نودا يا كالديري يا كالجندان يا كالتونكا يا كالنيافونكي يا كالجرجندو كلا رزلما يا كالبنطلون هم المولود غارف قيمين غارف والله ملخر والله البلالي سودان دي تمبكتو مسينا فري هاي كاي هاي خاصة كده نبدأ جاري راسي شوالي جيب مسينا هيك
That's our show this Friday. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us in Washington, have a great weekend.